too much. So I'll try to figure out where to start it. I was gonna say dropped out because Google so much like school, but I left Google to continue working with Evan Williams, who I worked with at Blogger, and I really admired and loved working with. And he had left, so I left and followed him. And we worked on this project together that we had dreamed up called Odeo. It was based on a question I asked, which was, iPods had just come out and were starting to be a thing, and I said, could you record your voice in Flash on the browser, and then convert it to an MP3, and then could you, when you plug your iPod in, could we write a little bit of software that syncs what you recorded to your iPod, and therefore we could democratize audio like we did for text on blogging? And he was like, oh my God, that's a whole thing. And we were like, that's a whole thing. We just invented a new thing. And it turns out that other people had been thinking of it and calling it podcasting. But it was brand new, so we decided to get into it. And what happened was we raised too much money too early because people were like, sure, it's you guys. Here's a lot of money. Go make a podcasting thing. And then a lot of stuff happened, like Apple decided to put podcasting in iTunes, and we were like, oh, that's probably a better place to put it. But the bigger problem was that we actually didn't do podcasting. We kind of clammed up when we turned on the microphone, and we realized that good audio is highly produced. It's better to listen to NPR than some guy in his basement for an hour talking about RSS. So we were that was the big problem was we didn't use our own product. That's a huge thing. And so what Ed did, which was really smart, was he said, look guys, there's about 12 of us, everybody pair up and just spend 2 weeks working on something that you would like to see in the world. And we'll all jam, and then we'll all share each other's projects after 2 weeks. So I paired up with the guy named Jack Dorsey, who we'd hired as an engineer, and who I had formed a great relationship with. We had been like working on audio, but like also dabbling on a lot of little side projects. We enjoyed collaborating, and we had both. It turns out we had both been kind of noodling around this thing for a while. In 2003, I had tried to create something I called Side Blogger, which was for those crappy posts that you don't think are good enough for your blog. You can write them on the side of your blog, and it was just like short sentence blogging that you didn't feel was good enough. Because I thought that most of my blog posts were crappy, and so that didn't take off. And Jack, it turns out, had been working on like noodling with this idea of like status messages for people instead of status messages for like police cars or ambulances. Like I'm here, So we came together, and this was at a time when SMS was or texting was beginning to be a thing in the US. It was already really popular in Europe, but in around 2005, 2006, all the carriers decided that you could send texts to each carrier before it was siloed. And we said, oh, what if we could build the whole thing like a network, a way to communicate, or a way to broadcast over this network, this existing SMS network that really isn't being taken advantage of. So the initial idea was, let's create a way for people to broadcast their current status over SMS, somewhat like the mood or the status thing on AIM that was around then, which was, I'm grumpy or I'm out of the office or whatever, and you could get at a glance, sort of get this ambient idea of what all your friends were feeling. And so that was our initial project for 2 weeks, and it was a lot of just faked workflows that I designed, and then a very rudimentary hookup from text messaging to the web, and so that's how Twitter got started. And we wanted to name it Twitter because it was just me and Jack and a few other people, and it wasn't a big team, so we didn't have to go through this whole naming process, which is usually really hard. We knew we wanted something that had this sense of immediacy and the sense of like your phone buzzing in your pocket. And so we had words like jitter and in there, and that sounded to me like too like sort of caffeine addled, you know, like it sounded negative. And someone had looked through the dictionary and just Noah Glass was one of the guys who was at Odeo who was helping us name it. And he was going through the dictionary and found Twitter, and he didn't even know what it meant. He just thought it sounded like that urgency. And I knew my wife is a as a wildlife rehabilitation specialist, and so we're all about the animals and stuff in our house. And I knew that Twitter meant the short bursts of information that birds use to communicate, and its secondary definition was laughter. And I said, oh my God, this is such a perfect name, we have to use it. And the guys were like, really? And I was just so into it that they're like, all right, settle down, we'll use Twitter. And like you said, the domain name was taken. And so we didn't have any money, so we didn't want to like just buy it, so we just did TWGTR at first. What happened later was it started to become a thing, and not that much of a thing, luckily. Twitter was owned by a bird enthusiast, and he just had some like pictures of some birds up there, twitter.com. And we offered him, I think, like $7,500 or something like that. And he was like, holy crap, payday. And you know, in our defense, we had no idea that it was going to be a whole big thing. Like, at the bottom of the website, it just said, having problems, call Biz, and I had my cell phone number. And that was on it for a really long time. It became a nuisance for me later, but and $7,500 was kind of a lot of money for us. You know?
You designed the logo, right? I mean, personally.
Yeah, I did. I drew the bird, and not the word. The typeface. The rounded typeface was a designer named Amy Franchini. That was her work. But I drew a little birdie, and because even from the beginning, I wanted something that, you know, represented nature, represented the idea that it's not about technology, it's about humanity, it's about the natural world. Because Google's overwhelming mantra was basically, we can achieve anything with technology, and it was all about tech. And I have some funny stories from Google if you want to hear them, but I sort of switched that around and said that, you know, it's all about humanity with a little help from tech. So let's reference nature.